All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf podcast where real estate agents tell how they do it. And today on the show is Laura Peery with the Steele Group of Sotheby's, or the Steele Group Sotheby's International Realty. Again, I think I said in Richmond, Virginia. Thanks for coming on. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Jere. Thanks for having me.
So everybody, we met virtually so far through Jeff Wilson, who's been on the show a couple of times. And I'm so excited to have you and learn more. You've got a few great lessons and great story. So
thank you. I do. Yeah, Jeff's a good buddy.
So tell us a little bit. Let's start with where you are now. I know you're a top agent at the Steele Group in Richmond, Virginia, and a top agent in Virginia. You've got many beautiful properties, including the one here behind me. FYI, I'm sure y'all can tell. But tell us just a little bit about your career today.
So I'm in my 8th year as a realtor. So I've reinvented myself several times in my life. But I got into real estate thinking it was just going to kind of be a part-time gig, nothing that I was really very interested in. And like I was telling you earlier before we got on, I basically got married early, was a stay-at-home mom, had kids, and came from a background where I really never had to be financially responsible for myself or, really worry that much. Was a therapist for a while, which satisfied that need to sort of save the world, but in the trenches, making no money at all, but still making a difference every day. And we can talk about that more later, how that translates big time into real estate. And then got divorced and found myself in my late 40s just having to figure out how to financially take care of things and myself and look for my future. Again, my mother had been in real estate in the 80s, always had wanted me to do the same. And I sort of begrudgingly did it, thinking, again, it would be part-time, never knowing that I would fall passionately, madly in love with it and achieve the type of success that I've been able to achieve in the last 8 years. So, that's where I am now. And there are a couple blips along the way that has caused me to sort of adjust my sales a little bit. But yeah.
That's awesome. So first of all, a few things are your former, let's do a review. So you've got kids, 2 kids, right?
3 kids.
3 kids. And how old are they?
They're 28, 30, and 32.
Wow. Mine are so much younger. And in my head, they're not going to get that big, but they are. So, and then about 8 years ago, you got into real estate because you got divorced and you were like, oh, wait, now it's time to step up and continue to have a life, which means build a career, which I know a lot of people, especially women, are like, that's not possible. And it was. You're doing incredibly well. And through that, your former career as basically a psychologist or counselor psychologist, and also dealing with things in the long run, you've dealt with some serious challenges that have come out. You've turned them into gifts. You've turned curses into blessings. So let's start with everybody. You've got to stay on to hear the whole thing too, because there's so much to this I don't want to give away too soon. And I want to start though with, take us back to, you got your license, you knew you were going to have to figure something out, but how did this all evolve? Like, how did you end up knowing this was it? Because you thought in the beginning it was short-term or part-time.
Well, I just really wasn't thinking I would do much of it. I was just kind of going to do a little bit, sell a couple people, family members' homes. And I ended up writing a letter. A family friend's parent had passed away, and I ended up writing a letter to one of the sons. And I'm a real proponent of letter writing, by the way. I don't do postcards, I write letters because I think they're effective. So I just wrote this letter. Anyway, I was brand spanking new in real estate. And he responded back. And anyway, I ended up getting a seat at the table to have a listing presentation for a $2 million listing, which was my first listing in Richmond. And that's a pretty high price point here. And I remember going to my broker, Bill Steele at the time, And I said, Bill, I really, I'm excited because I think I've got a great lead for a first listing of mine. And it's going to be, it's the $2 million listing. And, his eyes got really wide and his mouth dropped. And he was like, how are you going to handle that? Because he knew that I really didn't know what I was doing. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, well, oh, don't worry. I'll ask Bo, his son, who was the associate broker. I said, I'll ask him to co-list it with me. And he was just immediately just like relieved because, he knew I would need that kind of help. And what I found was, I've never been afraid to ask for somebody to help me, especially if they know how to do it better than I do.
Yeah.
So, from the get-go, I've never been afraid to share or worried, or, I don't get the calculator out and figure out how much I'm going to make on the front end. I always am focused on the relationship, getting the job done, servicing people's to my best of my ability. And the accolades and the financial piece always follows that. And I was a therapist making maybe $35,000 a year. And now that can easily
Like
happen
a year.
one
Right.
transaction. So,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people who, especially women who feel like they're glass ceilings or you really can't reinvent yourself, please believe in yourself because you can. You just have to work hard.
I love that. Work hard and find what you're good at, right? And how did you know? So you kind of went at this. You went after $2 million listing, and is that when you got the bug and said, "Okay, wait a minute, I am going to do this," or what happened?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great first listing. I learned a lot because I had no idea what I was doing. But and then I was able to get a foothold in a secondary market down in the northern neck of Virginia. So it's like the Potomac River and the Chesapeake Bay. It's kind of a feeder market for second homes in Richmond, and a little bit remote from where I live, but I was willing to go the distance, to get some traction and some footage, and then bring that experience and that portfolio back into the primary market to be able to have credibility. So that's kind of what I started doing. And that was fortunate because in that part of Virginia, there weren't any Sotheby's agents, and there were more, local agents. And a lot of the people who own second homes there really valued the reputation of Sotheby's International Realty, and also just wanted somebody kind of outside of the small town to represent them. So I was fortunate, right place, right time with that.
So did that gave you a portfolio of bigger listings? So you went and found where there's less competition, where you were doing something nobody else was doing.
Yes.
You got traction in that market. Now, are those people are also coming into Richmond?
Yes.
Okay, so you were picking up buyers and sellers.
Mm-hmm.
What?
What'd you say?
I love that. Like, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that at that point there was really not much strategy to it. It was just kind of, I was willing to drive an hour and a half, even 2 hours to grab a listing. Now I only do waterfront down there. There are other homes that are not waterfront, and it became a niche market. And now I'm known in my office as the River Queen, and I get referrals from all over the country because a lot of people have, second and third homes. And I mean, especially after the pandemic, right? Everybody wants waterfront lifestyle.
And look at how that unfolded too. It was like a way to get yourself in the market where it worked, and you never know what the future holds. Like, who knew? There's such a demand for that product and luxury in general now as well. So how quickly did you get traction, and did you become kind of a quote top agent as you got going?
Well, that first year, I had that listing that I was talking about, but in the middle of that took about a year to get to market because it was an estate situation. We had to get the house, you know how that takes. It took months and months. But during that time, I had an injury. I was coming up from swimming at my club, and I was walking across the drive in the parking lot and got struck by a car and had a head injury.
So you were walking and got hit by a car?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so I had a head injury. This is on April Fool's Day, 2015.
Of all days. I mean, it's like you can't write this stuff, right?
Yeah. So had the head injury, had, I'm fortunate because I didn't have any other physical injuries, but have a mild TBI that I still have, which compromises sort of my short-term memory and
Yeah.
some of the, when I get overly multitasking thing, it's just some internal brain stuff that you really don't necessarily see, but I have to navigate it all the time. So what that forced me to do, because I just
Well, wait, pause for a minute. So you TBI, what does TBI stand for?
traumatic brain injury.
Okay. So I'm not, see, for everybody, everybody's like, you didn't know that. Anyway, so you were going into, you had a traumatic brain injury, short-term memory loss, or things that still affect you, and what you did to compensate, or actually compensate's a bad word, because you really made a gift of a curse.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I know about myself, and that I'm really resilient, and I can always reframe a situation and make it, a positive experience. And that's all about, like, I said it earlier, I really believe thoughts become things, and you have to really make sure you choose those correct, wisely. So I had this, so what I ended up doing, I'm very fortunate. Also, I know a lot of colleagues in the Sotheby's, across the country, and we were all being coached by the same person. And this one gal had really strong processes. You might know Mackenzie Casey.
Yeah.
Sotheby's International Realty. So she was very generous and shared a lot of kind of my foundational processes. But what ended up happening was I spent a whole year getting my processes totally down to like the nano movement of what you have to do for a certain listing or a buyer or whatever. And it was because I was forgetting things. And so I did it because I had to. And any great guru or coach or ninja or whatever will say, get your processes in place and get your business aligned like that. It's not necessarily about your goals, it's about your processes. And so I was kind of forced into that organically because of my brain injury. And I think because I did that so well and so strongly and so like almost desperately, I did it and didn't, like, a lot of people kind of push back and say they don't have time to do it or whatever, but I had to. So ever since I've had those really strongly in place, which has probably been, I don't know, 2-3 years, I've gotten them all really down pat. Things have just been soaring. And the other thing is, I delegate a lot of the tasks.
So setting up your processes, getting really good at that, and then you just said delegating your tasks. So in setting up your processes, I mean, anybody can write a list, but how do you make sure it's implemented? How do you hold people accountable to it? How many people do you hold accountable to it? Really, how do you implement it?
So the list is, the processes, like you said, are lists. And by the way, if anybody wants to contact me, I'm happy to share those with them. I love sharing. So
share them with me. I mean, I've got some, but I'm always up for refining them.
So I put them on, for me, it's super easy. I put them on a Trello board. So each client has a Trello board, which is a free, app. And so whether it's a buyer or a seller, we just upload the processes. So we've got an initial buyer process, a buyer representation process.
You have a list and you assign it to your assistant on what to do, and she checks it off, or he checks it off when it's done. And you have one assistant, 2 assistants?
I have one assistant, and I have a one lead assisting agent.
So like a lead generator, or services leads once they come in.
Yeah, or just services leads that are under a certain price point usually.
Gotcha. So Trello, is that like Asana, or is that like a checklist where I use Asana, that's what I'm asking. Like, is it an app, a program?
Yeah, it's just a free program. And again, that we're getting, that's not, I don't stay in that lane. Janie does that for me.
This stuff, right? Oh, I'm gonna check
it's like a board, it's kind of like you upload things, and so I can see when things are checked off. And part of her daily accountability is every morning and every afternoon before she leaves, she has to make sure that Trello board's updated.
Updated every day and every afternoon. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, wow. And how many listings do you guys carry at a time usually?
I mean, right now
Right now, everybody has none.
yeah, I mean, I have two coming up. So I have one, typically, I don't know, 3 to 10.
That's
I mean,
good.
it's not
Yeah.
that many.
Just to get an idea of how, but it's amazing how, like you have a lot of historic properties. It's amazing how something that's not different, very similar, $203,000, I mean, whatever, making up a price point, but kind of an average price point of a metropolitan area, that pushes through quickly. Then you start getting these bigger, more elaborate properties, and the things that have to be done are different for every property and more intricate. And it's like doing 10 listings, for one typical listing. So it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the amount of stuff is about the same, whether or not
Yeah.
it's 300,000 or 3 million. It's just a
Yeah.
little bit, you got to be perhaps a little bit more savvy with some of your strategies for the higher end listing that might take longer, or, my listing presentation is pretty much the same, with the exception of some of the additional things I might do for a higher end listing. But,
Yeah.
it's I've got a lot more buyers because of the pandemic. So, as does everybody. But, I love what I do. And I believe that there's abundance everywhere. I don't worry about, from the very beginning, I've always just looked around any neighborhood, and there's so many houses. There's so much for everybody. And so that's always been my mindset. And I think that's a big piece of why I'm successful.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
that I maintain that and I show up.
It gives you a little bit of peace too.
Well,
there's only so much, and I have to get it because there's not enough.
Well, scarcity does not work in any type of relationship, does it?
No, not really.
Exactly.
I always say never be desperate, never be defensive, because neither one of those goes well. And a mindset scarcity or scarcity of mindset always pushes both of those. So what have you, like, as you came into business, you talked about, like, you took a year to get this one listing ready. Is that what your whole year was? And you talked about lessons you learned with that listing. What did that look like? What were the lessons?
Well, that year was the year I got hit by the car. So that required a lot of doctor's appointments for a long, long time. But in terms of, well, I've always had a lot of patience, but I've learned that patience is definitely something that you have to keep in check here. There are a lot of frustrations and a lot of things that can go wrong along the way. And I always am aware that I don't need to follow down the path of drama and anxiety and all that. And so I think one of my superpowers is that I can respond rather than react. And I think I'm pretty good at keeping the ship calm when they're, rough waters.
Well, I love what you said. You said this before we started recording, but before respond, not react. You said when things get negative, I just don't go with it. Or how did you put that? It was so, like, I love the way I wish we'd been recording.
I know. Well, I just don't. I don't go in negative spaces if at all possible. I delete toxic relationships, often.
So tell us, I delete toxic relationships. We have way too much in common.
I know.
Toxic relationships often. I'm big on that. And I don't write people off. I don't write people off easily. It's like have you ever seen Tyler Perry's, everybody, I've never talked about this on the show, but I don't think I have, but I talk about it all the time. Tyler Perry's Let 'Em Go.
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh, I'm going to send it to you. Everybody, I'm going to share it. But he talks about people and the people in your life. And some people, anyway, the story is keep the good ones close and let the bad ones go. And it's okay. But tell us a little, because in this business, I find, especially when we're newer, and I'm very guilty of this as when I was a newer agent, is you're trying so hard to just get the client and make it happen that you just put up with whatever you have to. And it's just like literally can suck the life out of you. what's your experience with that? And I mean, no, because now today I have so many amazing clients, but I had a stage in my career where there was a lot of toxicity. What did you have that? Did you not? Like, give us a little bit about, because I love what you, to elaborate on what you did say about I cut the toxic relationships out.
Yeah. Well, I think again, with my business and hopefully with my life as well, any sort of challenging situation, I try to find the silver lining or the lesson from that. I mean, I've had, my most difficult clients have given me the opportunity to create the best systems, really. I mean, I had a very, very, very difficult seller. And, because of their difficult demands, I was able to really sharpen my axe and create a really great part of my listing system, to keep track of things. Anyway, it's no great shakes, but I didn't have that in the past, right? And so, but and I think through the years, I'm a little bit of a magnet to difficult people, I think, but I've learned to really have good boundaries, and I think I've really learned how to kind of. Some people joke that that my voice tone changes when I really am serious about what a seller needs to do. Oftentimes they'll say, well, I knew I had to do it because you had that other Laura voice. And so, I think because I'm very, transparent, and I'm very upright and authentic, and I think a lot of successful agents have to be, that building rapport quickly is quite easy for me. And along with that is trust. And so I believe in people and they believe in me.
Yeah, exactly. So but when it comes to toxic relationships, do you find do they come in and you figure out how to cut them out, or do you see them coming and make sure they just don't get in? I've learned there's not a lot of men, but it took me a long time to get there.
I think I'm better at seeing them now.
Yeah.
And I just try to I think it's really about boundaries. Mm-hmm. And it's about not feeding into, anybody who's angry really wants you to come to their level and be angry with them, right? Because it just feeds them. And so I try not to. There's a fine line, and I think some of my therapy training has helped with that, and just life training.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you tell us a little bit, because that will get us into your your just life experience dealing with, because side note from me, I have found that I feel that real estate agents don't truly embrace the power and the necessity of understanding emotions and using that to negotiate well, because they go hand in hand. So coming from your background, tell us at first, I know about it, but you give us a little bit about what you did before, post-traumatic stress, veterans, you keep going from there.
So I was working in a behavioral health hospital that was sort of garden variety mental health, your typical depression, suicidal ideation, psychotic, whatever. There was children with at-risk behavior, et cetera. But they had a military unit that they had built really in response to all of the OEF and OIF veterans who had, just experienced horrific things in the last war. So it was a great, huge need to develop that wing, and the hospital took sort of the best of the best from all the disciplines and had them be primaries on that unit. So I was on that unit exclusively, and it was, PTSD and substance abuse, and a lot of times those two go hand in hand. And I was in groups when patients would have flashbacks and bang their fists in a cement wall, or it's pretty significant. And I think just my goal was to just help these people come back to a sense of as much normalcy as possible. And I understood what was going on, intellectually, obviously not emotionally. And I just love doing it.
What did you do in those situations? We're not going to become therapists in 5 minutes, but what did you apply there? And what can we learn from that? And what did into business now?
I think when somebody is in duress or stress, I think you have to just give them some space, let them express whatever that is. Keep yourself safe if it's something like, somebody's taking a swing at you. But that, knock on wood, that hasn't happened yet with me in real estate. And I think I'm always trying to, in my head, I'm not thinking, I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. So it's having some empathy.
Yeah.
Trying to understand where they're coming from, understanding that they are clearly upset about something. And hopefully it's something that we, if it's a misunderstanding, we can straighten it out. But I think you just have to get a little space in between the heat of the matter. And then just like any good therapy, you got to process it, right? So, and, I think a lot of people maybe lash out because they expect you to run away because maybe that's what happened in their past, to keep people away. And I just don't do that.
So, because in our business, they do lash out, or clients do that, and then agents do that.
Oh yeah.
When they do that, you think they're trying to keep us away, or? And I'm like, not, I like don't have an opinion. I'm curious. I'm asking the professional here, but really, why do they do that?
Well, I think people can be very reactionary, and it's based on things that we might not be seeing right in front of us. I mean, it's about your past history. I mean, we can do a whole nother dive deep on that, but everybody responds for different reasons, and everybody has different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Remember, like I remember when I took driver's ed, they showed that video of like an accident happening, and then like 6 people around the scene, and each person had a different view of what happened. Yeah. I mean, that's basically what happens with any situation. You have an event that happens, and then you've got different perspectives, and, representing people's, usually one of their biggest assets, if not the biggest asset, it's a stressor. And so you have to make sure that you nurture that and hold it as dearly as they hold it. And, I guess just be, I don't know. I keep on going like this. It's kind of like
it was holding the
embrace them.
Right. Yeah. But until you embrace the perspective, they can't trust you. You talked about trust. How can they trust you enough to be guided to any other perspective unless you can see theirs first? Seek first, seek to understand and be understood. Or if I can't understand your perspective, how can I help you? Even if your perspective is wrong, if I don't understand it and empathize with it in some way, not sympathize, but empathize, how can we be sure it's wrong? And how can we be sure we know what the right thing to do is for that person when we don't know their perspective?
Right.
So I think, is that kind of like, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, I think we all do the best we can do. And it's helpful if we can be aware enough of ourselves that in a stressful situation that we have a choice of how we want to respond. And that's where we have the control, right? We might not be able to control what's going on or the person across from us, but we can control how we choose to respond. And that is always where I begin.
Yeah. Do you ever have those moments when go ahead? No,
I just was going to say, I think in terms of building trust with my clients, I do a lot of, I think in the very beginning, I have lots of conversations about, what they want and what I'm about and how we can navigate this together. And again, I feel like just my personality, or I feel like I'm just doing what I do, but I've had feedback that I'm able to really connect with people quickly.
So you talk about probably because you can empathize and they sense that. Respond, don't react. I mean, I've had my moments where people are losing it on me and I'm like, there's some things I want to say right now and they're just not going to work. And I actually have like a thing I do now when that happens and it brings everybody, it diffuses everything. What is yours? Like, how do you
Well,
do when you're just like, do you ever get it? Because we're people, like we are
oh
emotional.
yeah.
Like
Oh,
sometimes I
all
just
the
want to hurt
time.
somebody.
Oh,
And when I get there, I got to do something and it can't be hurt somebody. What's yours?
well, I like to diffuse all day long. I like
Yeah.
to just
I think that's
siphon
what we
all
do.
day long, right?
Yeah.
So that I'm never building up. And so I do
Oh,
something really, I mean, I love it, but I set reminders on my phone of that go off it's kind of random. And it's just things that are important to me, like sayings that are, important to me. Like right now, I've got one that says, take care in the moment, never give up. I think the never give up comes like at the end of the day. And invariably, I'm just like this with somebody, and my phone will go doot, and I look down and it says never give up. So another one I have is attitude is everything, which is a big piece of my philosophy,
yeah.
So those types of
Just like
things
little
throughout the day,
checkpoints. It's like to
they're
snap
just
you out of
checkpoints.
whatever you
Yeah.
might be in or
Yeah,
to
just
reinforce
because.
the positivity.
Mhm.
So
Like that.
we talked about, I think we've been talking for half an hour, just not to like, and I don't know everybody, I'm not even whatever, doesn't matter. We talked about daily rituals. I don't want to miss that before we run out of time,
Mhm.
is my point.
Yeah.
So you've got, again, I want to repeat your story to everybody. So you remember, you came into this business late 40s, 50. Then your first year in the business, it's hard enough breaking in this business. You have a traumatic brain injury, getting hit by a car of all things. So then you've got to actually, but all of this stuff could sound so horrible, but you took it all and flipped it. You just kept flipping it. You
Yeah.
flipped it into you get divorced, you've got a bad situation, you flip it into a real estate career. Well, you start that and then you get hit by a car and can't remember anything. You flip that into creating processes and making yourself successful. You took every single one of those you took everything that looked like a problem, and a lot of people would say was obstacle, and you turn them into opportunities. So now we fast forward, you're very successful, you've got beautiful listings, you're a top agent, you're a top agent in Sotheby's, you're a top agent in your city, you're a very well-respected person, you've got all of this just groundedness about you and how to handle things. So all of that said, you talked about something, I don't remember if we were recording yet, I don't think we were, but about you're really big on daily rituals.
Right. So I am really, really, I'm a big believer in daily rituals and routines. I get up every day at 5:30 or 6, kind of do what I do. I like to sort of take quiet time to reflect. Then I usually listen or read something inspirational to me. And then I'll kind of look at my day and kind of get all this stuff done before 8:30 or 9, because at that time I've got to execute. The world's coming at me. So
Yeah.
and if I don't have time to sort of get myself together before everybody comes at me, then I just am kind of like a gerbil in a wheel all day long, right? The other
Which
thing I
creates that
really,
anxiety. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, and the other side note is with that accident, I have an anxiety disorder too. So, so I got to manage all that stuff. So yeah, I think the morning routine and ritual, I mean, your body loves the habituation of it. Your mind
Yeah.
does. It's something that I can't imagine ever doing anything else. I mean, even when we were working from home and, full on the pandemic, I still kept that routine up. I do a lot of time blocking on my calendar because of my memory problems. I keep everything on like on my phone, like a Google Drive.
This is so funny because you're just like me, but I swear I have it in my head because everything's on a Google Drive, everything's in Asana,
Yeah.
every text I send with my team is by
Yeah.
what the topic is. Because if I don't have it organized by the topic and the deal, I'm like, I can't remember the 20 things we're talking about today. I love
It's
it.
really good. I mean, it's really good for your brain though, too. I mean, imagine there's so many agents out there who are doing really well, but I keep on thinking how much better they'd do if they could get some of these processes down, because it gives I mean, I did it because my brain couldn't handle it, but it does let your brain not have to worry. Did I
Relax.
do that? Did I do this? Whatever.
Well,
And
the
so,
constant anxiety when
yeah,
somebody calls you, when somebody calls me, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to tell them everything we've done, as opposed to, God, what have I forgotten?
exactly.
Like the worst.
Yeah.
So anxiety, we're going to talk, I'm going to ask you one thing about anxiety, and then I want to get into your actual, let me, I'm sorry, y'all. I just have 1,000 questions for you and I want to organize them. So number one, your daily ritual, and then I have a question about anxiety. Your daily ritual is every day at 5:30 a.m. In short, you reflect probably for an hour. After you reflect, of course, you get ready and you get the big stuff done first. The stuff that's pressing, you make sure you know what's ahead, you make sure things are handled. So that by 9 a.m., by then you're showing appointments, phone calls are coming in. Now the day's coming at you and you're ready. Does that cover it?
Yeah.
Anxiety. So it's interesting how creating all of these things we were just saying actually kind of like settle the anxiety. I swear, like we are somehow like aligned by the stars or something, because we have so much in common. What I'm hearing from you, because the same, like I have to do this because of the anxiety. But what is you talked about anxiety, you've dealt with people with anxiety, you've dealt with anxiety personally. I actually have too. What have you learned from that, and what do you apply to your life today, and how does that translate into your success?
Well, I think again, that morning routine, part of that is because of my injuries, that I, if you could think of, let's just think of metaphor of a trash can, right? And so we all have our trash can. We start the day with an empty trash can and things happen and the trash can's filled. And then normally you go to sleep and you wake up and the trash can's empty again. That's kind of an easy metaphor. For me, my trash can doesn't ever empty because of my problems, right? So I start the day kind of a quarter full. So what happens is, and again, moving that metaphor down the road a little bit, like if you have a full trash can and it's not empty, then things kind of start coming out sideways, right? I used to tell that to my patients as well, right? So you've got to figure out, that's why I do these little seemingly small things, but they're just resets every day, all day long, to help me just like, oh, that's right. And so it's just kind of the coping skills that I've developed for myself. But
Okay, thriving skills. I will
yeah,
call them thriving skills, because they've literally
sure.
your obstacles have turned into opportunities. What you would think you would cope with, you've turned it into a thriving person.
Well, I knew I wasn't gonna let this, make me not do anything. I mean, I wasn't gonna have a pity party. I wasn't gonna stop doing what I knew I wanted to do.
A
Again,
pity
it's
party
just
might reinforce all the problems, and we don't need that. That's what I always say. I'm like, I don't want a pity party, because that's not going to make it better. It could definitely make it worse.
right.
It won't
So,
make
I
it
just
better.
think again, it's just that, I mean, it goes back to thoughts become things, choose the good ones.
Oh,
You create what you think, and
yeah.
that's where you have the control. And that's always been,
Thoughts
I've
become things.
always known that huh?
Keep going. I didn't want to lose that. Thoughts become things. Choose the good ones.
And that's the only thing we really have control over, right?
Mm-hmm.
How we think
Yeah.
about, I mean, so, I think, that's just how I operate, but I've done it so much that
Mm-hmm.
it's so routine and it's such a habit. Just my mind, the way I think, and my thoughts, and my habit, not just my physical habits, but my mental habits. I
Yeah.
think mental habits are super important to
I
maintain.
think it's amazing to listen to you, because what I see is someone who has taken somebody, and this is what makes a great real estate agent. Give me an obstacle and I will make it an opportunity. Give me something about a house that's supposed to be negative and I will spin it, or I will shift the property so that that negative is a positive, or there's a positive that way outweighs it, and position it that way. So that's what people see and hear. And that's what you're doing with your life as well.
I mean,
Or
another
even
thing
a
I always,
negotiation. What were you gonna say?
just another, I'm thinking like when I'm feeling like I'm stressed out or something, I'm
Yeah.
always imagining, like, if you're in a room, I mean, there's always a window or a door. I'm not trapped, right? Metaphorically, right? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, I think you just mentioned negotiation. I think for me, that's one of my strengths too, negotiation, because I'm a very fair person. Integrity is a big core value of mine. And I understand that in negotiation, you have to, compromise. But I think I'm pretty talented at navigating those waters on behalf of my clients.
What's the most important thing to keep in mind or never forget when you're negotiating?
That both sides most likely want to get the deal done.
Especially in our business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't benefit anybody to lose your temper.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Great advice.
And also, the most important thing during negotiation is breathing.
Yeah, there's the Apple Watch. I need to do that lately myself. The other day, I'm literally, I told you this earlier. I was like, oh my God, I think it was like to the point that I actually laugh at myself because I think I've got a panic attack, and maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I swear there's about to be a panic attack, and then I can't have one because it's so funny. It's like ridiculous. But anyway, so today, looking back at yourself getting into this business and looking at yourself today, what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Well, I've always had a lot of confidence, I think, in myself, but I wish I had stronger confidence in myself earlier.
Yeah.
I feel like I really know what
What would you say to yourself? What would you say to yourself? Like if you could go to that person 7 or 8 years ago, what would you say? Like, all right, Laura.
Yeah, you got this, Laura. Look at everything you've been through. And then I always have my former patients to, I have so many stories that are the worst case scenario from people who have been in real trauma and horrible times of their life, the military people in particular. I always have a story that I can pop in my head that makes me realize what I'm going through is nowhere near that traumatic or stressful, so it's just allows me to not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. You said that when something goes on the path to negative, when things go down, when I see something going down the path of negativity, I just don't go with it.
No, because I have a choice.
Love that. All right, final 3. Number 1, what has been your most powerful tool in becoming a successful real estate agent?
Having very defined processes.
And everybody listening is like, well, Jere, why don't you ask her what they are? Because I know how. Is there anything you want to share about that before you ask the next one, other than you are going to share them with us?
No, it's just, everything we do it so well. When you get used to it, you do it so well and you know how to do it. But wouldn't it be great if all that stuff that's in your head is actually on a piece of paper or somewhere, or on a digital file somewhere? And hey, wouldn't it even be greater if you do like me and I know what my hourly rate is and I delegate everything that I can pay somebody to do underneath what my hourly rate is?
So speaking of delegating, how do you decide what to delegate? There goes final 4, but anyway, final 3 to final 4. How do you decide what to delegate and to whom?
Well, I delegate. What I don't delegate is getting the deal, negotiating, and coming in when things go off the rails. I don't delegate that.
So that's a much easier way to do it. I delegate everything, but winning deals.
Like my listing, let's say, I haven't counted it recently, but like, let's say my listing process, maybe there are 120 some items on that. I am responsible for about 10.
And those include things winning the deal, negotiating the deal, and fixing problems.
Yep.
Being the fixer, because we're just fixers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that, talk about some mindset. You got to have the right. My husband said, he's like, Jere, you're just a fixer. I'm like, yeah, I'm a good one too. And
yeah.
That's what we're doing.
That's what, I say, that's why we do it, that's why we get the business we get, because we can navigate that and handle it. And, but I don't need to spend time entering an MLS listing, for example, if I've got somebody on my support team that can do it for me. I'd rather be out getting more business. That's what I'm good at.
Exactly. Next question. Books. What is the book that we've got to read that has changed your life or career?
Well, a lot of you probably have read it, but I think it's awesome, and it's Atomic Habits by James Clear.
I have a copy of it and I haven't read it. Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, one of his quotes is that, you really don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that's really true. I mean, that's my experience. The reason I've been able to continue to leverage myself and my brand and my business is because I have everything that I do in a process.
Yeah.
And the other
15 years to figure that out, unfortunately, but so true. What were you going to say about?
I think the other thing is just I've figured out early on to surround myself with high functioning, top producing agents, which I do.
You're around. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how I learned really quickly, I think. Just like if you want to learn how to play tennis, you need to play with people who are really good at playing tennis. So that's what I did. And I got to have great relationships with a lot of great people within our brand. And, I've been very fortunate to be in there.
But that tennis analogy is so true. I'm not a tennis player, but when I play with good tennis players, I'm like, oh, wait, I can do that. I just have to see it, be around it.
Exactly.
It's powerful.
It's very, powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah, it's so true. Even I always talk about, and again, everybody knows this podcast isn't a Sotheby's commercial. I just happen to be a Sotheby's agent, and I know a lot of great Sotheby's agents, and there are other agents at other companies. But I'd say when I came to Sotheby's International Realty, literally it was like osmosis. Like just being around different agents, I found myself doing things differently and doing bigger deals and just doing them better. Nobody even would say what to do. You just take it in that way because you don't realize it until you get traction with it, being around the right people.
It's like nothing else. I mean, it's just amazing, just the relationships and the camaraderie and the, willingness to share. I mean, there's a real tribe. I mean, it's quite amazing.
So true. Last question. If we forget everything else in this interview, what's the one thing we should remember?
Thoughts become things, choose the good ones.
Love it. Laura, thank you. That was so much fun.
Thanks, Jere. It's great to see you.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.